Hello, I'm Deborah Sword.
Hi everyone, my name is Tyson Bankert.
Tyson, we're always suggesting that people ask good questions. So I'm going to ask you, what's a good question? What does that even mean?
Yeah, a good question. Great question, Deborah. I think about really it's about really sometimes they can be off the cuff. It's really rooted in curiosity. It's really about being able to not be okay with what the answer is. For the most part, I think it's grounded in a really good purpose. Um, I also think that it's in some ways quite focused in what you're asking. But what's more important than just even asking the question per se, or asking a good question, is your ability to listen and having good follow-up. I think that actually makes that question or the answer um, can be really impactful for both you and the other person. And then I also think it's also one last thing about it is I think it's also about providing um, a non-judgmental space, which can be really um, seen through your body language and your tone than anything else. So those are a couple of things, a couple ingredients that I think of when it comes to asking a good question.
Yeah, an answer is only as good as the question that's asked. And if you were to do a search of what's a good question, then some artificial intelligence is going to give you a list about it being specific and open-ended. And those are all really important. I agree with you that there's more to it than that. It's how do you frame it, word it, and uh, understand the importance, the significance of the question you're asking. You're not cross-examining someone trying to get them to confess the way I used to do it when in a court of law. That's not your goal. It,
Mm-hmm.
the purpose in conflict competence is to invite somebody into the conversation with you. So, what are the words you use that are invitational? So, a question that says, well, that's right, isn't it? That's a question because it's got a question mark at the end of it. It's not an invitation. So, how do you recover from a question you worded that wasn't helpful or it was awkwardly worded? And, this is the place where you apologize, where you say, oh, wait, that didn't come out the way I meant it to. Or I stumbled over that. Can I take that back and ask a different question? You're in letting people know that you're vulnerable, that you're working this out the same as they are. We're all
Mm.
just doing the best we can. That vulnerability. So your question has a purpose, but the purpose is to improve the quality of the relationship. So it's inviting, it's open-ended, non-judgmental, as you say, Tyson. What are some other characteristics of it?
I think there's an element of it being something that's natural when you're asking the question. So it's not necessarily whether it's written or verbal, it's not something that's full of jargon, right? It's not it sometimes can be maybe straight to the point, or there's a story and then the question. Um, I think about also something else that I have really had to shift and change in how I ask questions is not to not be thinking about how I would answer them, or is this a question that I want to be asked, right? So you're really focusing in on what that other person has to say, and that's something I definitely I feel like I had to work on. Um, and then I also think it is about being comfortable or maybe uncomfortable with what is going to be said after that. And I think that for me also is that conflict competency piece of like, I'm going to ask this question, um, and being comfortable with what comes back to me. And I think you as the listener need to be responsible for that, whatever that answer might be, and working through that, right? That tension that you might have, or that person has said something that might be really quite heavy. And are you able to, are willing to be explore that with that person? Um, so I think like those are some really important pieces that I've learned about what it means to ask like a question. It's not necessarily the it's not about necessarily how, it's what you do after that question. So those are a couple of things that come up for me.
Yeah, that's really important. The answer can come back and it can feel aggressive or defensive, or here's one of my favorites, they didn't answer the question.
Mm,
Or they're just silent and you're waiting. So, some suggestions for that if somebody comes back and it feels like it's attacking or aggressive or defensive, can call it. Wow, that was use the word heavy. Wow, that was heavy. Is that what you intended?
hmm
Because or reframe it. That really sounded like an attack. I think what you were trying to say is, and then reframe it. And if they don't answer the question, I would find a way to ask the question in a different way. If they're just silent, I can wait. I can be patient. I can say, wait a while, and if they don't answer, say, did that question make you uncomfortable? Is that what's going on? Because I didn't intend that. The follow up uh, is part of that question, answer, which we call action, reaction, response.
hmm
And it's really important, as you say, to manage your response and not get defensive. So you can follow up with another question. You can reframe the question. You can repeat it to show you understood. And you say, and rather than just parroting it, which can sound mocking, you say, well, let me just repeat that to make sure I have it right.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think you said is. And then uh, if it's time for you to insert your own ideas or your point of view, you can ask, would you like to hear my thoughts on that? So, to me, the good question is one that invites a conversation, that gets a response rather than a reaction. And a response is an answer, a reaction is more of an attack. I'm reactive, like my dog is reactive on a leash.
Right. Well, thank you everyone for chiming into this week's episode. Um, uh, I think asking good questions takes practice as well, and so I hope hopefully this will be a start to asking better questions to have better quality relationships. And thank you so much for joining.
In the show notes, I'll put a link to an article I wrote on the reason that questions that start with the word why are almost always the wrong question.
Hmm. Why is that? Find
Read
find
the
out.
article. Read the article. Thank you very much and hope to see you again.